Hi, I'm Allie with PotomacBeads.com, and today I want to show you a bracelet tutorial using some of our Potomac Bead Company exclusives to make this fun Kiss of the Crown bracelet. The Kiss of the Crown bracelet really features also one of the beautiful Claspgarten clasps that we have a supply of here at PotomacBeads.com, and also for those of you in Europe at PotomacBeads.eu. For this bracelet, you will be using our BowTrio beads, which are the silver beads, and then our IrisDuo beads, which are the gold in the bracelet. The IrisDuos are going to mimic the Claspgarten clasp in that design and have that nice marquee shape. In addition to that, you'll use some 3x4mm crystals, some seed beads, and some spacer beads as well to make that fit perfect and nice the exact way that you want it. We'll be using 2 needles and going through the project using the 2 holes of the IrisDuo beads. You'll also be learning how to connect onto that 3-strand beautiful Claspgarten clasp. If you need any of the materials, below me in the video is a little drop down that you can get the links for the beautiful bracelet, as well as at the end of the video I'll go over the exact details as far as the counts and the color selections that I have made for the bracelet. So to begin the Kiss of the Crown bracelet, because we are using 2 needles on our white Wildfire thread, we are going to go through the clasp right away. I'm using this Claspgarten silver-plated grooved marquee clasp. That's going to add a lot to that end where we have the crystals in and kind of tie it all together and make that Kiss of the Crown be nice and jeweled up. So I'm going to take the thread right through and make sure to pull my thread length so they're equal coming out of the end of the clasp. I'm going to take one of my 11-0 in that crystal lab color because I'm doing the all crystal and lab and gold colors. I'm going to take both threads through that same bead in the same direction. So that way you just have one piece of thread through there. From here, I am going to split the threads or separate them out so that way we can go into our first of our BowTrio beads. To go into the first of the BowTrio beads, I want to leave a little bit of space. So I'm going to use 3 of my 11-0s. And same thing, I'm going to take both needles through. After that, we're going to start down the center row of the bracelet. To start down the center row of the bracelet, we are going to be using our BowTrios first, and then our Aztec Gold IrisDuos. The IrisDuos have 2 holes, but we're going to bring the threads together through the center of the BowTrio. Because of that, you want to try to make sure that whichever way you're facing your IrisDuos, because they're flat on one side and rounded on the other, that the IrisDuos are all facing the same direction. You're going to take your needle and thread through the first of the BowTrio. Keep the left needle to the left, the right needle to the right, and add in the IrisDuo. If you want a little bit of space between, you can add seed beads on the sides of that before going back into the next BowTrio. This time the BowTrio is going to face down. So what's going to happen with these BowTrios is they are going to look like they are kissing right here with the actual IrisDuo right in the middle. So you can see the thread there, since I don't have it pulled tight, going from the baseline there of one single, separating out for the IrisDuo, and then going together again through the BowTrio. So the BowTrios are all going to sit like they are doing that kiss at the center of them. To move on then to the next, we are going to literally repeat that the whole central row. So to repeat that, you're just going to pick up your next BowTrio, this time facing up. Keep the right needle to the right, the left needle to the left, and grab your next IrisDuo. So you want to make sure in the middle here that your thread is not twisting. What I'm going to do to make it nice and simple is actually only work with one needle at a time, and then I'll bring in and work with the other needle. So I'm going to make sure that I have my needle on the right-hand side, going through the right-hand hole of the IrisDuo, and I'll put the one off on the left to grab on as I come through a second pass, basically. So I'm going to grab on through my right hole of my IrisDuo, then I'm going to go through my next of my BowTrio beads. I'm going to stick on my next BowTrio, go through my next right hole of my iris beads. That way I make sure that they're all sitting in the same direction. And it's nice and simple. You're going to basically put on 2 of the bow trios, and then you put on the right hand hole of the iris bead. Push that down next to your clasp, and now you can pick up your left needle, go through the center hole of the bow trio again, but this time pick up the left hand hole of the IrisDuo bead. You're going to continue this pattern the whole length of your wrist, whether or not it's 6 3/4 up to an 8. You want to make sure, because it is a little bit bigger clasp, that you kind of try it on because it won't shrink or get smaller in size. We're not doing anything to manipulate that or to change that size. So you're going to string the whole way till you have your center row of your Kiss of the Crown on. Once you're done stringing that central row of your bow trio beads and your iris duos, you're going to take off the other side of the clasp. So the original side of the clasp has on the little trigger end, and we had put 3 beads on and then 1 right before the clasp basically, which accounts to 4. So we're going to repeat that same pattern. And I'm going to take both of those threads basically, we're going to use both going through, and we are going to do the same thing. So I have both threads and needles. I'm going to pick up 1 right now with my right needle, and then take the left needle and go through those same beads. There you're going to have the 4 beads coming right out of the end, and we're going to go into the clasp on the other side. When I go into the clasp on the other side, I'm going to take both needles, just like I did with both threads, and go through the clasp in the same direction through that center loop, going from 1 and then coming down. When I come down, rather than going through all 4 beads, I'm only going to go through that first bead with both needles, bringing it down closer to and down closer to this one here. Once you're down that first bead, you're going to split your threads. So 1 thread is going to go to the right hand side of the bracelet, and 1 thread is going to go to the left. I'm going to pull and make sure I don't have any extra thread exposed here. Get rid of all that extra thread. And now we're going to come down the left and the right side. So just like I said before, the needles are going to split, that we have our clasp, and 1 needle and thread is going to go to the right, and 1 needle and thread is going to go to the left. From the outside here, with that needle that's on the right hand side, I'm going to go ahead and add my 11 O's to catch on to that outer hole. As I catch on to the outer hole then, and kind of bridge a gap here, I'll be able to start adding then my iris duos, my second row of iris duos with my demi rounds right along the side. I have on 4 of my Crystal Lab 11s, and that's going to link from the middle basically to the outer edge. When you separate the needles, you're doing the same thing with the right needle that you are with the left, and vice versa. So I'm going to untwist my threads here. I've got lots of threads going. Push that one off to the side. Grab the other one and create that arch as well. So I'm going to add my 4 11s. And I'm going to go into the bow trios on the other side, going through both holes of the bow trios. As we add in, you can see that nice little effect that's going on. We will then catch on to the outer clasps as we come back through the project. Right now what we're going to do is we are going to add in our second row of our IrisDuo, our second and third, which is actually going to be done on the side here. For spacing reasons, we're going to be using the 11O demi rounds in the gold color. The reason we're using the demi rounds versus say a 15 is because the 15s actually will go inside the holes of those bow trios. So we don't want that to happen. So we are going to get, for spacing, just that extra little bit. We are using a demi round. And on the left hand side, when you're working with the left needle, you're going to go through so that the IrisDuo is facing up. You're going to go through the right hole of the IrisDuo as it's facing up. When you pick up your left needle, you're going to put on the demi round. Then you're going to go through the right hole of the IrisDuo and add a demi round and go on to your next bow trios. Again, with the bow trios, you're not adding anything between them. You're literally just sewing right through both of them. And that's going to pop our IrisDuo right in the middle there. Continue on up then, both the right and the left side, adding in your IrisDuos, making sure that they're sitting so that the rounded side is sitting up and that they're all facing the same direction, going through and just adding in your next sets, both on the right and the left-hand side, and adding in that next row of the IrisDuos. Once you're done with the outer rows, adding in your IrisDuos and your demi rounds, it's time to connect back to the starter and reinforce that clasp. What we're going to do, like the other side, is we're going to add 5 11-0 seed beads. I already did it here at the base just to show you. And then we're going to go through the 11-0 seed bead that sits closest to the clasp. And bring the needle out right after that 11-0 seed bead. After that 11-0 seed bead then, you're going to go through the clasp with that same needle and thread, and then go back down through that same 11-0 seed bead. Once you're back down through that same 11-0 seed bead, without any extra wire kind of twisted there, you're going to go back down through the seed beads that you just added. So it might be getting a little tight there in that 11-0. Go ahead and force your needle and thread into that section, pulling it through. And then once you get it through, without having tons of thread twisted here, we're going to go up through those 5 beads that sit along the top here, and down the 5 beads with the other needle. So the needles get separated. The needle on the one side here, we are going to bring back down the left side and out those 5 beads. Once it comes down the left side and out the 5 beads, you're going to add 5 more beads of the 11s, and then we go into the super simple pattern of just adding in our crystals with our demi rounds. When I add in the crystals with the demi rounds, I am going to go ahead and just get those demi round, crystal, demi round. So it's just going to be demi and then the crystal, which is the 2x3 millimeter rondelle in the half silver, and then right into the next IrisDuo. So very, very simple pattern of demi round, crystal, demi, right along through to the next IrisDuo. And those will fit pretty perfectly right between and above the BowTrio beads there as well. So I'm doing that down the one side here. I'm going to flip over then and do down the other side also. Once we get to the end, I'll show you how we're going to go from the outer edge here, attach to the clasp, and then reinforce and come back down the edge, doing a row of reinforcement and connecting to those outer loops of this larger clasp. At the opposite end of the clasp, then we are going to kind of mimic this same design that we got on the other side. Because the clasp is a little bit different, it's not going to sit exactly the same on each side, because it's not the same on each side, because one side is the loop and one side is the clasp. It sits pretty much the same distance apart from one another, but it sits a little bit further off the actual clasp itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make up for that by adding one of my 11-0 seed beads. And then I have in my 5 demi round beads. And then from the 5 demi rounds, I'm also going to add the 2 demi rounds that I had going through the clasp. Go up through the clasp then. Oh my God. And then back through the first 2 demi rounds. Those first 2 demi rounds that I go back through, I'm going to do a nice little tight pull and bring those in towards the middle. Again, what we did was 2 demi rounds then, and we sewed back in down through those 5 beads along the side of the BowTrio and out. That's going to connect that upper row and make that look just as nice as the other side. So again, coming out those 5 beads, you're going to add your 5 demi rounds, then your 2 demi rounds, and go back through, add 2 more, and back down that line of 5. Now that I'm done the crystals on the outer edge, I already have my top needle here showing that you're just going to add on your extra seed beads to bridge that gap from the outside of the bottom IrisDuo to the inside here. And then what I'm going to do is actually connect to the outer rings here. So I'm going to connect to the outer ring simply taking my thread and needle. The one that's on the right is going to stay towards the right. The one that's on the left is going to stay to the left. Coming out before that 11-0 at the very end, we're going to kind of mimic that same design. And I'm going to actually add in some of my gold beads because I don't have much gold going along the sides here. You can add your Crystal 11 Lab if you want to do that. I'm going to add in about 6 of my 11 demi round, excuse me. A little bit less than that. Changing from the 11s to the demis changes the count. And I have 4 on. I'm going to go up through the loop of the clasp. Move that other thread out of the way. Come back down through 2 of the demi rounds. Give a nice tight pull so you don't have tons of extra thread showing like I currently do. And make sure you don't have extra threads showing in the project as well. I'm going to do a little tight pull, get rid of a lot of that extra thread there. From there, then we're actually going to connect on to the outer edge here and reinforce. So I'm going to add in more of my gold demis. This time I'll do 5, and then I'll pick up the 5 outer beads here that I put on the outer row. So that does another little triangle there of gold this time rather than the silver. So just like I did on this side, I'm going to do the same thing on this opposite side. Going through. Getting my thread untangled again. You can see that little bridge gap right there. And then on the left-hand side, same thing, tighten it up so we don't see any extra thread. Go ahead and add in 4 demi rounds. Go up through the clasp on that outer edge. Down through the first 2. Give a nice tight pull so we don't have that extra thread showing right there. And then from there, add 5 more 11 demis and go down the 5 along the side. And as you add the 5 along the side, then you can see kind of that nice arching effect that you're adding in the seed beads. I'm going to, off camera, just do a nice little pull so that way I get all that extra thread that is exposed nice and tight so it is not exposed and you get even more of that little connection area and that V. What you're going to do then is take the thread and needle back down the sides here, right along the outer edge, and from there along the outer edge, if you would want to, you can decorate the outside of the IrisDuos coming out from the demi round, adding in 5 11s and back in. I'm going to keep it nice and simple and just retrace the line so I can get back down to the start so I can go ahead and attach to the other ends of the clasp on the other side. The final touch then to finish off the Kiss of the Crown is I took my thread and needle and reinforced, going back up along the 5 beads, through the 2, through the clasp, back down through the 4, and back down through the 5. I now have 2 thread ends that I'm going to work back along the project and kind of snake them in so you can't see them till I get the 2 threads right next to one another and I can tie off a knot. So I'm going to run the thread along that inner row there. You'll never see it. Go through the eye here. Again, we'll run it along the outside. You won't see it as well. You can also retrace along the back of the edge here if you want. And then what I'm going to do is come down and bring my needle and thread down here further into the project. And when those two thread ends are meeting, we're just going to tie a knot to get rid of our thread ends. Right over left, left over right, and then we'll pull the needles towards the back of the project so that knot really does go into the very, very back of the project and gets hidden. And once you have that, then I'll show you kind of the effect that you're getting with the spacing and the sizing, because you are getting just the slightest bow when it's laying down, but then when you're wearing it, it's wearing nicely on the wrist. So I'm going to burn these thread edges down then. And once I have that burned down, you can see when you're holding it that it has that slight bit of a curvature to it. That's going to follow the curvature of your actual wrist. So when it's sitting on your wrist, it's going to look nice and flat. You get your clasp in here. Put this push clasp on here and show you kind of the effect of the marquee and the marquee. So once you have that on, you have your nice push clasp, you have the thread that kind of follows that beautiful little line along it to add on and to get that nice kiss of the crown bracelet. Again, if you need any of the materials, you can go back to the beginning of the video, you can go below the video and get links for that as well. The colors that I am using is the Aztec Gold in the IrisDuo, and you'll want a full tube of those when you're working with them. As far as the bow trios go, I ended up using about 16 groupings, so 32 in total. And then the seed beads and crystals, obviously you're just using however many bow trios you have, you're using twice, or you're using that same amount of crystals. So about 32 to 36 of the crystals as well. One strand will do it for those. Again, if you need any of the materials for this, I'll also put links below the video in that little description. You can gather up your materials. I did use the 0.006 white Wildfire thread for the design and continue to do it using the nice Claspgarten clasp. I like the Claspgarten clasp that I used, which is also called a grooved marquee, going along with kind of that marquee look of the kiss of the crown. You can always also give a little thumbs up if you like the video that you see and the design that you see. You can also comment below if you have any questions or want to ask anything or give any ideas to other people in the community. That would be great as well. And you can subscribe to this YouTube channel to get regular updates when I do new videos, new product spotlights, and give you up-to-date information on what's going on in the beading world. Also, stay connected with us on Facebook, and if you would like, join our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. It's a wonderful, wonderful interactive community that really is designed to make you a better beader and for you to get ideas, have questions answered, and kind of have a pro right there with you, as well as seeing the beautiful designs and artistic creations that people make. As always, thank you so much for watching and have fun making the Kiss of the Crown bracelet.